In my last class, I pointed out that T.S. Eliot borrows from Edmund Spenser's Prothalamion the refrain of Prothalamion, "Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song," and uses the same in The Wasteland. I also pointed out that in The Wasteland it becomes a kind of anti-refrain rather than a refrain. This is because the line in The Wasteland takes a direction, takes a thematic direction which is completely opposed to the thematic direction taken by the traditional refrain. There is one more reason for calling the line an anti-refrain rather than a refrain. A refrain is repeated at regular intervals. The line is repeated in the wasteland, of course, but it is not repeated at regular intervals. It is repeated at irregular intervals, and the repetition is chaotic, and hence I think the line fully qualifies for being called an anti-refrain rather than a refrain. It is not possible to forget Tiresias for a stretch of time while reading The Wasteland, because Tiresias is omnipresent in the wasteland even when his presence is not denoted. It is he who experiences all the experiences of the wasteland, and it is through him that the wasteland attains some kind of unity. Here, Tiresias suddenly realizes that he is in London. He feels a cold blast on his back, and he realizes that he is in London, in cold London, in wet London. The lines that follow contain powerful images of grossness, of sordidness, of squalor, and perhaps also of the trenches of the First World War, infested with rats. The Dull Canal mentioned is the Regent's Canal, which is north of central London. There is an allusion to the Tempest of William Shakespeare in the lines that succeed. In the Tempest, Ferdinand, Prince of Naples, grieves over his father, whom he believes has drowned in the sea. We now meet with an allusion to the Parliament of Bees by the Elizabethan dramatist John Day. However, there is a significant difference. In the John Day passage, it is noise of horns and hunting. In the Eliot passage, it is sound of horns and motors. And what do these motors do? These motors, these cars, bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter. Sweeney, of course, is a stock character in Eliot. Sweeney Agonistes, Sweeney among the nightingales. Sweeney represents low life, indecency, grossness, animality, awkwardness, clumsiness. Here, Sweeney is brought to Mrs. Porter. Who is Mrs. Porter? After much investigation, I stumbled across the fact that there was a real Mrs. Porter, and in all probability, T.S. Eliot was aware of her existence. Mrs. Porter was the madame of a brothel in Cairo, in Egypt, and she ran the brothel with the help of her daughter. And the brothel was frequented by Australian troops, and the Australian soldiers sang songs in her honor. I don't know whether it was in her honor or whether it was something else. And in one of the songs, Mrs. Porter and her daughter washed their feet in soda water. In fact, it is not feet, it is some other part of the anatomy. I don't want to specify the part. Soda water is bicarbonate of soda solution, which is used by Mrs. Porter and her daughter to keep their bodies clean and safe. The verse paragraph is brought to a close by a line of French poetry. The line is taken from Paul Verlaine's famous sonnet Parsifal. Paul Verlaine, as you know, was the great French symbolist poet, the great French decadent poet. The line can be translated thus: "Oh, these children voices singing in the choir." In the sonnet, Sir Parsifal goes to Chapel Perilous in search of the Holy Grail. In Chapel Perilous, Sir Parsifal hears the choir singing, and the choir consists of children. Sir Parsifal's sexual passions are aroused. What is Eliot trying to convey? The condition of Sir Parsifal effectively captures the condition of the modern man, at any rate, the modern European. The contemporary European is completely distracted, completely aimless, because he's obsessed with sex, with unholy sex, with illicit sex, with degenerate sex, with immoral sex, with perverted sex. The next four lines place side by side twit twit and juck juck. Twit twit is a sound made by the nightingale. The nightingale sings beautifully. And the song of the nightingale, you must remember, inspired John Keats to write Ode to a Nightingale, which is one of the greatest odes in the English language. I'm a great fan of the Nightingale Ode, and I hope someday to teach it online, but that is beside the point. Here, twit twit is juxtaposed with juck juck. Twit twit is brought into conjunction with juck juck. Twit twit is a sound made by the nightingale. One of the most beautiful sounds in nature. Jug jug, as I've already observed, is the sound of sexual intercourse. In post-Great War Europe, twit twit, the song of the nightingale, does not inspire in man anything elevated, anything beautiful, anything sublime, anything spiritual. It only inspires in him thoughts of sex, thoughts of sexual intercourse. So rudely forced, so rudely forced. The Song of the Nightingale inspires in the contemporary European thoughts of sex, not even consensual sex, but rape, inspires in the contemporary European thoughts of sex, thoughts of violent sex. The poet makes it clear that, in his opinion, the modern European has a one track mind. He is obsessed with sex.